Well, Brandon, we're coming to you this week from Owner's Acres here in Aurora. This is our intercropping, and last week we focused on soybeans a little bit. I want to talk about corn, where we're at, what determines corn yield, and obviously some of the factors we want to look at. First off, though, I wanted to do a little update. As most of you know, we had that wind event come through here that hit a big portion of central Nebraska. And just following up, actually going to be walking some fields later with our insurance, just coming back and checking. But you can see on some of these plants that goosenecked here, they did go ahead and put on an ear. But obviously the concern is when we look at some of these ears here, even though we put on an ear, we are looking at a smaller ear, some tip back, and we'll look at some ears from corn plants that weren't as damaged. But and then we have a plant here that completely snapped, obviously, and didn't make it all the way to one that buckled up and put an ear clear on down here at the ground level. But again, we're talking a relatively small ear comparison. And typically what we've seen is these are half to, anywhere from a third to 2/3, but typically average about half an ear. So as we talk about that, you might want to go back and double check some of those fields. We'll be doing some more work here today. What I want to talk about a little bit is, obviously we're still looking at our plant health. One of the things I am picking up in a few fields here, you'll see as we zoom in, you won't see them, but you can start to see the webbing discoloration along the midrib, picking up some spider mites out here, especially where we had the wind damage and we opened this canopy up. So anytime I go to a heavy snap area or lodged area, I'm finding quite a bit of spider mites to areas where the corn's standing fine and we don't have any issues. So one of the things to be looking at if you had a wind event. As we all know, now's the time to also be splitting stocks. We've been splitting stocks. Again, we're watching for any discoloration on any of these main nodes here. Our concern obviously is if we have any stock disease, anthracnose, fusarium, anything getting into that plant that might cause an issue later on. So we're looking good as far as stock quality here. Finally, what I talked about was corn yield. Obviously we all know that population drives that, but it's not planted or drop population. We need to make sure we go out and determine just how many ears per acre do we have. What's our final stand count? Then we obviously look at rows around in length. That's something we're all familiar with. That's what we post on Twitter, right? The biggest length we can, right? But what's most important here and what we want to talk about a lot is kernel depth. That's also known as test weight. And that's one of the biggest things that we'll be looking at as we come here and snap ears. Two different products can yield different kernel depths. You can see, different, we got a little more of a pink cob versus a red here. And just starting to watch this kernel depth and how we fill out. What's really important to kernel depth, as we've talked about a little bit in our winter meetings, is phosphorus, having the nitrogen out there, and obviously the sunlight. There's been some concern over some of the haze, some of the smoke maybe we had, but by running our numbers, we've had a lot of sunlight premium days. Maybe not quite as bright as we would have liked them, but compared to 2019, where we had 11 days of cloudy, dreary, rainy weather, we have avoided that so far this August. So even with a little haze in the sky, I'm not overly concerned. Did it maybe take a little top end off? That's potential. But we still have a pretty good crop that looks like it's coming our way. But that kernel depth, that calculator, that factor we use, kernels per bushel, can range from 70, 75,000 all the way up to 90,000. So as you count rows and ears and kernels, what really matters is that kernel depth, because there's a 15 to 20% swing right here just in our kernel depth, our test weight. So be watching that. For example, here on our intercrop, looks can be deceiving. I've got ears that are about the same size here, but on my outside rows, this set of ears is coming from where I'm at 50,000 versus these ears here in the middle at 33,000. And that's why plant population, knowing that final count, really taking some time just to pull ears and do a little more of your, get that tape measure back out, try it out and just see what we have for final ears. Did we throw some barren stalks? Did we leave some nubbins out there? What good quality ears do we have? That's why sometimes we get tricked on yield. We think we look good as far as the ears we pull, but we gotta know all these factors. So Good time here in the next couple weeks. Right now we're at that 2,300 GDU mark, give or take. Most 113-day hybrids, 110 to 113, are going to need 2,600, 2,700 GDUs to black layer. So we're 400 GDUs away from black layer. That's 25 a day, 20, 25 a day. You know, we're looking at another 15 days or so to where we're black layer. But I always remind people, don't cut off the water too soon. Make sure we know what we have. Make sure we keep this crop going. We don't want to leave ourselves short on this kernel depth, this test weight, because that's one of the driving factors in yield.